Nick and Andy, there's a big game at Anfield this weekend, Liverpool against Tottenham. But instead of focusing on that game specifically, let's focus on big picture here. Let's zoom out and have a look at where Liverpool and Tottenham are heading over the next few years. What kind of direction are they going in as clubs? Obviously, Nick, we know Liverpool are losing Jurgen Klopp. Arne Slot's kind of come in. We think hasn't been confirmed yet, but pretty much a done deal. Does this have the same feel as sort of a Sir Alex Ferguson leaving for Man United as what's going to happen at Liverpool, and there's going to be a general malaise and a real struggle over the next few years? Or do we think, with the young players they have coming through, the squad Klopp's leaving behind, everything else he's put in place, that it should be relatively, I'm not going to say easy, but easier than the Man United situation to kind of sustain some success and be in the top four and all the rest of it? Or what's your thoughts on Liverpool straight away and where they're heading as a club right now?
It's a really good question, of course, but I think they're mostly in position to be fine. And the reason I say this is that, yeah, Slot has to do a lot of things he hasn't done before, but he's also looks fairly used to being one of at a club that people recognize the name, but isn't the biggest spender in its league a couple of times now. Not that Feyenoord is poor at all. So I think there's a really good chance that it works out. There will be some changes. I do not expect, unless he's playing a PR card, to see as many young kids force-fed minutes over veterans. And I think there's a Liverpool team out there right now that is maybe a little less exciting and a little less fast, but a little more stable from game to game, especially at the back. And so I think it'll look a lot different. It'll take some time to bed in, obviously. I don't know that they'll reach the heights, but the reason I don't think they reach the heights is because of other teams we can talk about, not because of Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, right? Being back in the Champions League for next season. Obviously, they'll need to invest money in the squad this summer. You're not quite sure if that money is going to be available. And then the likes of Salah, Van Dijk, others, coming perhaps towards the end of their Liverpool careers and their careers in general. So how long can those guys keep going? But Andy, your thoughts on Liverpool there, and then we'll get on to Tottenham next and the direction they're heading.
Yeah, it is. To me, Liverpool's a lot more interesting as a medium-term project going forward. So I'm talking like 3 years out. What is that going to look like? Pretty confidently say no Salah, no Van Dijk at that point. Allison, maybe. We'll see. Obviously, goalkeepers age a little bit differently. There is a very, very strong, young, just about to enter their prime core within this team. And that's great. That's a great foundation to work with. But I don't think you can expect, I don't know, any of them to step up into the world-class level that Van Dijk and Salah have been as the leaders of that team. I'm not saying be as productive as them, but as the leaders that they have been for that team, who is going to step into that void inevitably? And maybe we're just talking about for next season here, but that's to me the most interesting thing. And that's kind of why I've thought all along, as soon as we knew Klopp was leaving, it kind of makes sense for Salah to go in the summer because obviously contract running down, he had the interest last summer. And just the politicalness that comes with the hierarchy of I am the big name player, you are the new manager, I have power over you, kind of that, that has existed before in the game, and it typically doesn't end super well. And new managers, coaches always want to kind of put their imprint, their fingerprints on the team, and kind of moving on, not getting rid of, but gracefully moving on from the biggest name, the biggest face, the cult of personality essentially that exists at Liverpool might make things a little bit easier, I think, for Arne Slot when he inevitably gets appointed.
Yeah, and financially as well, right? If you get a huge transfer
Sure.
fee for Salah, you can reinvest it on, again, it looks like the direction Liverpool are going in is less superstars, more younger players with a lot more potential. But it is exciting if you look at Kwanzaa, Kelleher, Bradley, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott. I mean, some really good young players there that are nowhere near their peaks. So you're right. Probably 3-4 years from now, we'll be maybe talking about a different situation as some of those star players stick around for Liverpool. But I feel like in the short to medium term, they're looking okay. No matter who the manager is, they'll be right up there in the top six of the Premier League. Nick, we'll go first for you on Tottenham then, and then we'll go to Andy's thoughts. But obviously, top four is looking unlikely this season, and that's no Champions League football, which Ange Postecoglou hasn't been big on anyway. He's saying we just want to keep progressing as a club, and Champions League isn't the be all and end all. It looks like they're going to have a big squad overhaul this summer, though, when you look at some of the guys who are just there from the Mourinho and Conte era still don't really fit in with his system and his plan. Do you think that Tottenham, with Ange in charge, season under his belt, can actually overtake Liverpool, maybe a couple other teams, to get into the top four next season? Do you feel like that almost gives them a head start, and they've been working maybe hard behind the scenes on their recruitment, and they know very clearly the type and the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The profile of player that they need to sign this summer, and they're very aligned, and that almost puts them ahead of Liverpool and a couple of others and where we'd expect them to finish next season.
So let's start here. I think that Tottenham are as well positioned as anyone to be, maybe outside of City, a top four fixture in the future because of how they've aligned their club. The stadium pain that they went through for all that time. They're going to have domestic revenue. They're going to have revenue outside of the club. The brand is probably as big as it's ever been. And so I expect them to put a dent into the fight for regularity, I guess I would say. Whereas there are other clubs. Look, what we've seen over the past 5 years, maybe 10, and what I said and felt wrong for a couple of years, but I'm starting to feel vindicated, was this: the money that is going to each spot on the table allows a team that sticks around for 4 or 5 years to have a chance to become a real member of the discussion. And so I think it's going to be harder than ever to get into the top 8 and eventually the top half of the table, because big clubs are sticking around. Big clubs are. That's what you're seeing with Villa, who was a sleeping giant. Newcastle, a little bit of a different story, obviously, because of the funding, but I don't want to say a sleeping giant, but a Mike Ashley sleeping giant, whatever you want to say.
Giant.
What's that?
A hibernating giant.
A hibernating giant. Yes, you love those hibernating giants. They were the black and white bear. But I think Tottenham, for as much as we complained about why wouldn't they just do this? Why wouldn't the ownership and the management do this? They've now set themselves up to become a spender. And I would almost look at them as can a Bayern Munich type team that can outspend almost every team in the league but isn't a hyper team, can they do it in the Premier League? And I think they can.
Okay, Andy, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think Spurs fans would hope that the ownership would spend a lot more money. I don't know if that necessarily is going to be the outcome here with Ange and the football they want to play, but they're certainly set up better to do that with the stadium. I wonder, with Chelsea, like Nick mentioned there, Newcastle, Aston Villa, it's almost staying ahead of all those teams, and Manchester United as well, and then just hoping that one of Man City or Arsenal or Liverpool falters a bit, and you can get yourself in that really exclusive part of the league at the very, very top. But the football's exciting, need better player, or need players that are better suited to that style of football. And then it feels like once that kind of clicks maybe this summer, then Tottenham can really, like Nick said, be consistently up there for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, Liverpool, I'm interested 3 years out. Spurs, I'm interested every minute of every hour of every day this summer going into next season, because there's so much that needs to happen in such a short period of time. They've been bailed out by Son, I couldn't tell you how many times this season. And the fact that they were in the top 4 race as long as they were was a bit of a minor miracle of his doing, of some weird results in games early in the season that put them in really good stead, far ahead of, and I said at the time, there's some regression coming. This is going to swing back the other direction, and it's not going to look like this all season. Injuries have played a part down the stretch of the season as well, and I don't think they're finishing top 4 this season. They're going to crawl over the finish line to the end of the season. There's a strong core. What they did last summer, I thought, was pretty good. You could say, they overspent on Brennan Johnson. Second half of the season, he's been one of the very few bright spots in this team, and kind of his rapid acceleration into this team and I think you made the perfect point about that goes along with Johnson. He is a fit for the way that Ange wants to play. He wants wingers that are going to keep a little bit of width, that are going to run to the inline, that are going to cross the ball into the penalty area, across the 6-yard box, to the back post. That's how they've scored a ton of goals down the stretch of the season. You need a guy like that on the left side now because Son, for all of his quality, always wants to cut inside. You probably need a center forward who is able to be a little bit, maybe it's Son for a year or two, but that's only kind of a Band-Aid fix for this team. You need a forward that's going to stretch the field and make runs in behind and give James Madison, who's struggled the second half, or since coming back from injury, has struggled to really produce much of anything. The fullbacks are actually a strong point for this team. They need depth, and they need to teach Guglielmo Vicario how to deal with set pieces. And I know Ange is not interested in talking about it, and he's not bothered by it, and he maybe doesn't think it's that big of a deal. But man, it bothers me every time the Spurs give away a corner kick. I have to think, well, there's a goal coming here. It really reminds me of David De Gea when he came to the Premier League in like 2011 or 2012 from Atletico Madrid. He probably weighed 150 pounds, soaking wet at that time, could not get off the ground to punch, to catch, to do anything. And he got bullied inside the penalty area. And eventually he grew into it, he developed, and they coached that out of him. And he went on to have, over a decade-long career at Manchester United. So there's a ton of work to do. I don't think they're going to spend big to do it. I think they're going to spend smartly. It's going to be players that profile the way that Ange wants to play. I will say, though, Daniel Levy looking for additional investment into the club. And so behind the scenes, the wheels are still moving. The stadium's in place. The match day revenue's in place. The non-match day revenue of that stadium is going to become a big, big strength for Spurs in the future. But it's going to take time. It is going to be a lot more than just this summer and probably even next January. This is a couple-year project. And I think for the first time, Levy and the people that matter at Spurs, I think they know that, and I think they're committed to it.
Yeah, I think Ange is the perfect manager to build an exciting brand of football consistently, and I think as long as you have that plan in place for this is the playing style, then the recruitment takes care of itself, and it may not be big name players being signed all the time, but it will be the right players for the way that Spurs want to develop. And I think that's look at what Liverpool did under Jurgen Klopp. I think you could probably say that a lot over the years. The players they signed weren't the biggest names, but they were the best fit.
Mickey Van de Ven was not the biggest name when he came in, and he's, for a lot of neutrals, I think probably one of their favorite favorite players in the league from not their team, Destiny Udogie, and obviously he was signed before Ange came in, but the way that he's used him, good managers that have a system and a philosophy take no-name players and make them into stars. It typically doesn't happen at the level, a top 5 or top 6 team in the Premier League. It's typically happening in lower level clubs, slightly lower, and then they make the move into those clubs. So it's refreshing, I guess, to wrap all this up. It is refreshing to see one of the big clubs going in a project direction and not just here's a 60 million, here's a 70 million, here's an 80 million player to fix the team immediately, really building something hopefully long-term and sustainable.
I just think the question with Spurs is consistency of that stardom and of those stars. Yeah. For example, you guys know I watch Newcastle all the time. If you were to really nail me down, I'd tell you, all right, Bruno, Alexander Isak, Sven Botman, those are the guys. And Spurs, there are some guys there who I would say that about. I think the defensive pairing of Van de Ven and Romero, they look very good together. Son, but guys like Madison, he's good most weeks. Are you going to become, if we're talking about competing for titles, are you going to tell me that you're the Kevin De Bruyne of the team? And I know that's a lofty thing to say because how many Kevin De Bruynes are there? But guys like Madison, Udogie, Porro look wonderful. Can they be world-class almost all the time? That, to me, is the question for Spurs.
It really is. I think in midfield as well, Basuma and Sarr were great for the first half of the season, but injuries, going away to AFCON, and then that just hasn't been the same since the mid part of the season. So I wonder if Spurs are going to make a big move there for like a proper number 6, number 8, box to box. I think yeah, they need a bit more depth in that area because there's been quite a big drop off when those guys haven't been available. But final question, real quick answer: which of these two teams could get into the title conversation over the next couple of seasons, Andy?
Easily Liverpool. Easily.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah. Liverpool. McAllister's 25, Gravenberch 21. There's some really good players that may be better under a different manager too.
Yeah. I'm going to be a bit of a damn squib, and I don't think either team is really going to be in the title conversation for the next...
you didn't say there was an option, Joe.
No, I asked the question, so I got to do that. But yeah, I think it was, Man City, Arsenal obviously are in a great position long term, but these two teams have the best chance, I think, to be the best of the rest when you look at what Man United are doing and they're building and how long that's going to take. For the next few seasons, it's going to be Liverpool or Tottenham. Can you get yourselves into the title race? And then who knows? But I think they have a very good chance, and it's going to be interesting. I think probably the two most interesting teams when you look at the top 7 or 8 in the Premier League table right now to see how Ange can kick on from this debut season, and then where Liverpool can go after Klopp. So we'll keep you updated on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com with all the latest on the rebuild for Liverpool this summer, the next step forward for Tottenham this summer, and see where both of these clubs are heading in the future. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.